Rangers. Power Rangers were a superhero team that debuted in 1993 on TV. That's right, this is an interesting type of superhero story to discuss because Power Rangers originated on TV, not in comic books, although we'll be discussing the Power Ranger comic books today. But just in case you somehow missed Power Rangers, although I don't really know how you could since it's been consistently on TV for over 20 years now, Power Rangers is a show with 5 to 6 teenagers that get superpowers. They basically get color-coded uniforms, super strength, great martial arts ability. They always have a mentor, and they always get these big robots that combine into an even bigger robot. They could be cars, they could be animals, they could be dinosaurs, whatever they are, they're robots, and they combine into a bigger robot. And they fight some sort of evil monster every week with one head monster controlling it all. That's the basic bare bones idea behind Power Rangers. And of course, America didn't even really come up with the idea of Power Rangers. It's been airing over in Japan for over 40 years as Super Sentai. So basically, Power Rangers were something in the 90s that were huge. I remember working retail at the time and we could not keep Power Ranger figures stocked. We just couldn't. It was way too popular. But I think at the time everybody thought it was going to be a fad. It was going to be something that burned bright for a few years and then faded away. And why wouldn't they think that? Most kids' TV shows, toys, etc. only last for a couple years and then they fade away. There's very few examples of things like your G.I. Joes, your Transformers that keep coming back for multiple years. There's not that many. Power Rangers defied all expectations, and I think some of that is because eventually they just hit on this concept of rebooting every 1 to 2 years. Not really rebooting so much as introducing a new cast with a new set of powers. That's what they do in Japan. Here in America, they take that Japanese footage of all the robots fighting monsters, and then they use American actors for the other scenes. We're going to take a look at a comic book that Marvel actually produced in late 1995. That meant the show was basically, it had only been in its 3rd season for a month or two. They had a movie come out in that time. A movie came out in late 95. So I think Marvel thought that this was a fad that they could capitalize on. But I don't think they spent much time, care, or attention on the comic book we're about to read. You be the judge. Before we even get into the comic book itself, let's go through some of the tropes that you could expect to find in any given Power Rangers episode, and we'll see if they apply in the comic book as well. Some of those tropes included monsters based off of something mundane and given a pun name.
Oh, you Rangers make me mad! Waking me up with a rap that bad!
Never it's time for us to beat you!
Combining robots to form a bigger robot. The Rangers engaging in an after-school activity as a group.
Yeah!
Yeah, way to go, Jason! All right, Jason!
Go, Jason!
The Rangers learning a lesson about safety or morality, like in a public service announcement.
You know what? Maybe what they need are some friends.
Yeah. Come on. That'll be $4.50. I got this one. Thanks, man.
School bullies Bulk and Skull getting garbage dumped on their heads or falling on their butts. The Rangers wearing the same colors in both their civilian and superhero lives. Zordon being a mostly useless mentor by either pointing out a monster or saying, "May the power protect you," and not much else.
Find out what they are up to while I analyze the time device.
Power Rangers making puns while fighting.
Have a nice trip! See you next fall!
Billy talking in overly technical terms.
This is more phenomenal.
They respond to tactile pressure followed by auditory stimulus.
So what you're saying is that we just touch and talk. Like this.
I only listed a characteristic for Billy because I do sort of feel that the other Rangers weren't given a lot of easily definable personality traits other than maybe the activities that they were into, but that was really more of a season 1 thing. Like, one guy was into dancing, one guy was into martial arts, one person was into gymnastics. But, you know, these teenagers kind of got a little more generic as time went on. Oh, Jesus.
I need teenagers. Teenagers with attitude.
That's disturbing.
Teenagers help me fight crime and monsters. Monsters!
Okay. All right. Well, let's read this issue together. This is Power Rangers #1.
By Marvel Comics.
Yes, by Marvel Comics. The issue has no problem dating itself, as it prominently in panel 1 establishes that the story is taking place at the Internet Festival 95, where you can meet kids from around the world. On the left side, it's not really a panel, but we have a quick who's who of the Power Rangers. We've got Tommy, Kimberly, Rocky, Aisha, Billy, and Adam. Although I would argue that in the issue itself, none of their motivations or personality come through too strongly. The story takes place at Angel Grove High School, and we hear Kimberly saying from inside the school, "Wow, having a computer modem is a lot better than a cordless phone, isn't it, Billy?" And Billy responds in panel 2, "Indeed, Kimberly, because it allows for extended global communication with several people at once." And then Adam explains in English, Billy means he's talking with people from all over the world. To be fair, in 1995, while the internet was certainly becoming ubiquitous, not everybody knew what you could do with the internet. So explaining it feels extra dated now, but at the time in 1995, I definitely remember explaining to both adults and young kids what the internet was. And it certainly didn't resemble the internet of today. We didn't have lots of video. We didn't have any social media platforms, really. It was a lot of news, chat rooms, shopping, but not shopping like you can on Amazon today. So it was pretty different. It's okay that they're explaining this. It's a product of the time. But what's really interesting is if we look at the credits, let's see who creates this issue. We have as the penciler Ron Lim, and the writer is Fabian Nicieza. Now those are two very prominent, popular talents at the time. It is a little surprising that they're working on this licensed comic. Ron Lim had been penciling Silver Surfer for many years and was the illustrator of a lot of the Infinity Gauntlet issues as well as the follow-ups. He worked on X-Men 2099. He worked on a lot of popular titles, and then Fabian Nicieza at this point in time had just finished writing a lot of X-Men titles. Fabian started to get noticed when he worked on things like New Warriors. He came up with that concept. He co-created Deadpool. I mean, that's a pretty big feather in your cap. But I don't think he was getting along with the editors at Marvel too well, because right around 1995 and early 95 at that, he basically got the heave-ho from the X-Men books that he was writing. And those were like Marvel's top comics, and he wasn't placed on something, you know, close to that, like your Spider-Man or Avengers. So all of a sudden he was doing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. He only did this for a few issues, and then he left Marvel. So this was on his way out. The thing is, I don't think either of these guys cared about the work they're doing. We're going to see that the story is really, there's no care or attention. There's certainly no love or affection for the characters in it. It's just a by-the-numbers exercise. And I don't think even the colorist or the letterer cared. I mean, look at panel 1. Look at that word balloon. That is some weird spacing there. That is not attention to detail. I don't think the people making this comic cared. Anyway, right away in page 1, we do hit a number of tropes. The gang is engaged in an after-school activity. They're all just hanging out together looking at computers. One guy typing, 5 people standing around him. Sounds like a lot of fun. Color-coded, even though they're not in their Power Rangers uniforms, of course they're all wearing their colors. Billy's in blue, Kimberly's in pink, etc. The only one I think you could argue is the color that they've used for Adam. That's not really black. That's just some sort of gray, we'll call it. I mean, close enough, I guess. And technobabble. Billy always talked in overly technical terms. That was his character definition, I guess we'll call it. And in panel 2, he literally is saying something that Adam feels the need to say. In other words, what he means is, so they're sort of lampshading exactly what this trope is. Fair enough. These 6 teenagers are absolutely fascinated that Billy is in a chat room right now. And I don't know how exactly he knows this, but Tommy says, "Look at that! A boy from Australia is online." Billy explains that he's interacting with teens from at least 10 different countries, and he's just really excited that they're doing this on a Saturday morning. In the next panel, we meet the school bullies, Bulk and Skull, and they're upset that all those kids are having so much fun and that they're not having fun with them. This characterization is a little strange if you were a fan of the show, in that this is how Bulk and Skull were portrayed back in season 1. They were the school bullies, they were jerks, they were annoying, but as time went on, they softened. They were always the slapstick, they were always dumb, but by season 3, they had joined a junior police force, so they weren't really the school bullies anymore. That characterization had gone out the window, but it just sort of shows a general lack of attention to detail, and no one really cares. By the way, their plan that we're about to see in a second, it's pretty bonkers. Some adult, and I'm only calling him an adult because he seems to have a mustache, I have no idea who he is handing a floppy disk to a man in a purple jacket, we all wear those, and he says, "Hang on to this disk, Peter, don't use it anymore." Peter responds, "I didn't know the disk had a glitch on it, Mr. Sillos. It could have accidentally caused our computers to type out garbled messages." Oh, Fabian, that's such a dated way of looking at computers. Maybe in 1982 that could fly, when people were like, "Oh, computers, can't those control my car and microwave and the stoplight?" No, a computer is a computer. And I don't know of what kind of disk gets a glitch in it that all of a sudden intentionally changes words. That's what we're going to see it does. It doesn't make any sense. It's just so weird. It's not weird intentionally so. It's weird like lazy. Like, this is just the first idea I had off the top of my head. Let's go with it. Skull says, "I know, let's try to get that disk and put it in the computer." The computer, because apparently there's only one at the 95 Internet Festival. We know what he means. He's going to ruin Billy's good day with this disk. And of course, that guy Peter instantly drops it out of his jacket. Bulk and Skull act like they don't really know how to use computers, but they say, let's just stick it in the slot. That's right, you don't have to execute a run command. You don't have to do anything like that. You just stick it in apparently any disk drive, and it controls Billy's computer. Or maybe it's controlling everybody's computer? I don't know. They don't show us where this computer that Skull is sticking the disk in is. I blame Ron Lim for that. We should have a really good understanding of where people are in relation to each other. I would think it's pretty unlikely that he stood right next to Billy and inserted a disk into Billy's computer. That probably didn't happen. But where did he stick this in? Who knows? Instantly, things go weird, which is apparently represented by a few black dots across the screen. And Billy says, "This is odd. I asked the Australian boy what he thought of Crocodile Dundee, and they thought I asked them if they lived in an alligator teepee." Seriously? Why would it rhyme? But we'll look past that. Why is Billy asking about Crocodile Dundee? That's a pretty old movie at this point, and honestly, that would probably offend an Australian if the first thing you ask them is, "What do you think of Crocodile Dundee?" That's your point of cultural reference. Whatever, let's keep moving. See this red guy here that's got sort of an evil mask, the letter Z on his forehead, and apparently his brain is exposed unless he dumped a bunch of jigsaw puzzle pieces and spaghetti on top of his head. Well, will explain who he is. Actually, he sort of explains who he is. He says, "How interesting! Watching these Power Ranger brats wasting their day being nice and friendly has led me, Lord Zed, to come up with a new way to make their lives miserable and take over the world." Pretend for a minute that you've never even heard of Power Rangers. You've definitely never seen an episode of the show. Your only knowledge is coming from this comic book that you're reading. You'd go, okay, this guy's evil, he's called Lord Zed, and he wants to take over the world. Why? Who is he? Where is he? None of that is explained. If you don't have the TV show to understand who this guy is and what he wants and why he wants it, or even where he's operating from, or why he looks like a monster, you don't have any of that information in this comic. He just pops up and says he's gonna ruin the Power Rangers' day. Well, okay, I mean, you're spying on them, you know their civilian identities. Why not just walk up to their house and hold their parents hostage with a gun? I mean, I know that's too dark for Power Rangers. They're not going to get that realistic. At the same time, these are questions you could be asking if you've never seen the TV show. You don't necessarily know what that tone is. You have no idea who Lord Zed is, and the comic book doesn't explain it. That's a problem. That's a problem, and I think that you've got to blame the writer, you've got to blame the editor. Nobody making this comic book cared. In the next page, Lord Zed apparently uses magic to make bugs literally jump out of every computer screen. Fair enough, we don't know how his magic works. But the reaction by the Power Rangers is pretty strange. Aisha says, "Billy, tell me this is part of the program." No, Aisha, there is no program that makes literal mechanical bugs jump out of a computer. That's not a thing that happens. Rocky replies to her, "I'm afraid not, Aisha. It is as if someone has infected our system with a bug." I guess Tommy is saying, there's only one person we know who would do something rotten like this. Talk about underplaying the severity of this. Something rotten. How about something terrifying? Mechanical bugs are jumping out of kids' computer screens and attacking them. The Power Rangers run underneath some bleachers, so I guess they went outside. We don't really see any of that, but that's fine. This is shorthand. Then they each shout which power they have by color, and they're instantly the Power Rangers. This, I think, is a problem with this comic. They've decided to fit 2 stories into just something like 18 pages. We've got 9-page stories. Your typical episode of the show would be 20 minutes. Boiling that down to just 9 pages is too short. And you're missing out on the cool stuff. Them transforming into superheroes was one of the cooler things. I think that you could make this look better. And you know what? People finally have. Boom Studios now has a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic set back during this time period, and the reviews for it are great. It's got fantastic artwork, and it's got interesting stories that take their time. They're not trying to just rush through the motions. They're trying to tell new, original stories. Like, what if all of the Power Rangers had to share the Green Ranger's power? Or what if a Power Ranger in a parallel Earth basically went bad and took over successfully that whole planet? Those are interesting stories, and the artwork supports it. It's not rushed, but in this, nope, it is. And you know what? We've hit another trope. Every episode of Power Rangers, something like a pumpkin or a cab or who knows what would get transformed into a monster. That was just what the show was. And this is no different. Lord Zed has turned the computers into, well, he turned the computer bugs into literal bugs, because that's what this is about, isn't it? Skull put a disc with bugs on it into the computer, and it created, through Lord Zed's magic, bugs. We get a pretty generic shot of the Power Rangers kicking and punching at these bugs. And then in the next page, Billy quickly ends the threat by turning off the electricity. Cool. That makes sense. That's a cool little twist, and Billy, being the smart one, makes sense for him to figure out how to solve this particular problem. I will say, take another look at panel 1 here, and Billy's hand isn't colored right. Kind of minor, but it just shows the overall level of attention being spent on this comic book. Kimberly, the Pink Ranger, says that she's getting a message from Zordon. Zordon apparently is telling them that the crash bugs are popping up all over the world, not just those computer terminals. Every computer which was linked to them at the festival is now under attack. Zordon was useless. Having a mentor in a superhero story is important, but that mentor has to teach them and train them and make them better. And I don't think Zordon really fit the bill there. I think he simply gave them their abilities or would call them and say, there's a monster at such and such a place. That's not even really exposition detailing what the threat is or adding stakes to it. It's just useless. I don't think there was much of a point to it.
I developed a custom routine of Connect 4 and Zumba classes for the Rangers.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
I also created a gluten-free diet for the team, and this was back in 1995.
Tommy says that they need to split up and use their Zord vehicles to fight these bugs. In the next page, we basically get a huge panel that's a montage of sorts of these Zords fighting the bugs. And then it even says, "Go, go, Power Rangers," as though we can imagine the theme song. Again, if you've never heard of Power Rangers before, if maybe like your cousin was like, oh, there's a cool show, you should get that comic book, and you got the comic book and that was your introduction, you just see "Go, go, Power Rangers" written on a panel and just be like, who's saying that? These Zords are each blowing up a bug. There are a bunch of kid faces all over the place that look just sort of vaguely surprised, not really terrified. Maybe they're surprised at a frog robot shooting a laser out of its mouth. I don't know. This should be the fun, exciting part, shouldn't it? This should be where we get to see the artist go nuts and draw really cool action scenes. This is all we get. The next several panels tell us what's happening. They don't show us. The White Ranger puts it most succinctly by saying, Zed has combined the energy from the internet systems and created one big WorldNet monster. So essentially, all of the bugs have merged from all over the world. Who knows how long that took? Maybe it was instantaneous. I don't know how far apart they were spread or how long these Zords took to come together, but they instantly do come together and form the Ninja Mega Falcon Zord. Combining robots, I mean big robots fighting monsters, that sort of kaiju action is why we're here. So this is what we're paying for. This is what we want. Let's see how well they do this. Well, a bloopy version of the Megazord without many details apparently punches the bug, and then the bug apparently zaps it. That's the whole fight. 2 panels. Hope you enjoy it. The Power Rangers are in their cockpits saying, like, how do we defeat this? And we get another trope. Puns while fighting. That's the nature of the show. That's fine. It's a little campy. In this specific panel, Rocky says, how do we step on a bug that's bigger than our feet? Again, Billy figures out how they can beat it. Basically, it's a version of what they did before by shutting off the power that supplies this creature. Before, of course, he could just turn off an electrical switch. In this case, they decide to ask everyone in the world to turn off their computers. So somehow they've got a computer on the Megazord that talks to every computer in the world, and they say, hey kids, the Power Rangers need your help. Everybody hang up on your computer modems now. I would buy them being able to somehow shut off the phone lines more easily than I can buy them sending a message to every computer in the world and everybody taking it at face value. If I got a message that said, the Power Rangers need your help, turn off your computer, I'd go, oh, that's my friend Vincent messing with me. Talk about anticlimactic, it works. That's right, in the next few panels, people simply turn off their computers, an energy web over the planet vanishes over 3 panels, and that represents the monster somehow going away. There is no big explosion, the Power Rangers don't punch it and beat it up or anything. We just see the energy around the Earth fade away, and I guess we're supposed to assume that the monster also fades away, but we don't even get to see that. Then the Power Rangers congratulate each other, saying, we did it. And then the White Ranger specifically says, not just us, everybody did it together, because Zed tried turning global communications into a bad thing, but it backfired on him. Now he's learned that the more we all talk to each other all over the world, the better we'll understand each other, and the better off we'll all be. They learned a lesson. How beautiful. And by the way, Lord Zed just sort of goes like this. The end. That's real satisfying, isn't it? To find like what happens to the enemy, his big comeuppance. It isn't him ranting and raving. It isn't him getting punched or in jail or killed or anything. It's just him impotently shaking his fists. I'm curious what you think of Power Rangers. I was a little too old to really get into Power Rangers. I was already in high school. I was working a part-time job, and then I was in college and in the real world working. So I never really got into Power Rangers. It was just after my time. But I have seen some episodes. I think especially in like, in high school and in college, sometimes I would just, watch it because it was on. So I'm familiar with what it is, and I've read some of the comics out of curiosity, but I never had the toys. I certainly haven't seen the show in, well over 15 years. I haven't seen any of the episodes. But I'm a little curious about the upcoming movie. I mean, I don't know if I've got high hopes for it, but could be kind of cool. I'm curious, was Power Rangers something you were into? And do you read the current Power Rangers comic? Because I've heard a lot of good things about that. Let me know. Anyway, until then, I appreciate it. We'll be back next week. And until then, keep reading comics.
I live in a tube. If you make me cry, I could drown.